One angry millionaire, one brick, one life-changing lesson. On a bright Saturday afternoon in Chicago, a young businessman named Ethan Parker drove his brand-new black Jaguar through a quiet neighborhood. Ethan was only 30 years old, but he already owned a big company, wore expensive suits, and talked more to his phone than to real people. That day, he was late for an important meeting and kept checking his shiny gold watch every 2 minutes. "Time is money," he always said proudly. His car stereo blasted loud music while he sped through the narrow streets like he was racing in a movie. Kids playing basketball nearby quickly moved aside as the Jaguar zoomed past them. Ethan loved his car more than anything. He polished it every Sunday, parked it far away from other cars, and even gave it a nickname, Black Panther. His friends laughed at him for loving a car so much, but Ethan didn't care. While driving, he spoke to himself dramatically like a superhero. "Nobody scratches my Panther," he said proudly. At a red light, he noticed an old man staring at the car. Ethan rolled down the window slightly and said, "Beautiful, isn't it?" The old man nodded slowly and replied, "Cars shine outside. Hearts should shine too." Ethan laughed awkwardly and drove away thinking, old people always talk like fortune cookies. As Ethan entered a quieter street, he slowed down slightly because parked cars lined both sides of the road. He noticed movement near a blue van and expected a child to run across the street. But nothing happened. He relaxed and pressed the accelerator again. Suddenly, bang! A brick smashed into the side door of the Jaguar. The loud sound nearly stopped Ethan's heart. His coffee spilled onto his expensive suit, and he screamed, "My car." He slammed on the brakes so hard that his sunglasses flew off his face and landed in his lap. Furious, Ethan reversed the car and jumped out like an angry bull. He saw a skinny teenage boy standing nervously near the sidewalk. Ethan stormed toward him. "Did you throw that brick?" he shouted. The boy looked frightened and took a small step backward. Ethan grabbed him by the shoulders and yelled, "Do you know how much this car costs? That dent alone costs more than your entire neighborhood." A nearby dog started barking loudly as if supporting the argument. The boy trembled and whispered, "I'm sorry, mister." The boy's name was Daniel. He wore old sneakers with holes in them and looked exhausted. Tears filled his eyes as he pointed behind a parked truck. "Please don't be angry," he begged. "I didn't know what else to do." Ethan crossed his arms impatiently. "Then maybe don't throw bricks at luxury cars." Daniel wiped his face with his sleeve and said softly, "Nobody would stop. I tried waving at people for 20 minutes. Ethan's anger slowly weakened, though he still glanced sadly at the dent in his precious Jaguar. Daniel led Ethan behind the truck, where another boy lay on the ground beside a wheelchair. The boy looked about 12 years old and wore thick glasses. His wheelchair had tipped over near the curb, and he had cuts on his arms. "This is my brother, Sam," Daniel explained. "He fell while I was trying to push him home." Sam tried to smile and joked weakly, "I guess gravity really likes me." Ethan almost laughed at that. Daniel continued, "I couldn't lift him alone, and nobody stopped to help." Ethan suddenly felt ashamed. He looked at the injured boy and then at his own reflection in the Jaguar window. Just minutes earlier, he had been screaming about a car dent while a helpless child lay injured nearby. Without another word, Ethan carefully lifted Sam back into the wheelchair. Sam groaned dramatically and said, "Easy, sir, I'm fragile like potato chips." Ethan chuckled despite himself. He cleaned Sam's wounds gently with a handkerchief from his pocket while Daniel thanked him again and again. As Ethan adjusted the wheelchair, Sam looked at the Jaguar and whistled. "Wow, mister, your car looks like a spaceship." Ethan smiled proudly for a second until Sam added, "Well, except for the dent. Now it looks like the spaceship lost a fight." Daniel burst into laughter, and even Ethan laughed too. For the first time in many months, he laughed without thinking about business, money, or meetings. It felt strange, but good. The brothers invited Ethan to walk them home. At first, he wanted to refuse because he was still late for his meeting. But something inside him said, "Stay." So he slowly walked beside them. Their house was tiny and old, with peeling paint and a squeaky front gate. Yet the moment they entered, warmth filled the room. Their grandmother sat on a couch knitting a sweater while watching a cooking show on television. The smell of soup floated through the air. Daniel introduced Ethan to their grandmother, Mrs. Wilson. She smiled kindly and said, "Thank you for helping my boys." Then she looked at the dented Jaguar outside the window and added, "Though I think Daniel's end could improve." Everyone laughed again. Ethan sat awkwardly at their small kitchen table while Mrs. Wilson served him homemade chicken soup. Ethan had eaten in expensive restaurants around the world, but somehow this simple soup tasted better than all of them. During dinner, Ethan learned about the boys' lives. Their parents had died years earlier in an accident, and their grandmother raised them alone. Daniel worked after school at a grocery store, and Sam loved drawing comic books. Sam showed Ethan a sketchbook full of superheroes. One hero wore a fancy suit and drove a shiny black car called the Brick Magnet. Ethan laughed so hard he nearly spilled his soup. "That hero sounds familiar," he admitted. Meanwhile, Ethan's phone kept buzzing with calls from his office. His assistant left angry messages. "Mr. Parker, the investors are waiting." Another message said, "Where are you?" Ethan stared at the phone for a long moment before switching it off completely. Daniel looked surprised. "Won't you get in trouble?" Ethan leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Maybe I need trouble," he said quietly. It was the first honest thing he had said in a long time. As evening arrived, Ethan prepared to leave. Before he got into the Jaguar, Sam rode closer and said, "Mr. Ethan?" Ethan turned around. "Thanks for stopping." Ethan looked confused. "I didn't stop. You threw a brick at me." Sam smiled wisely and replied, "Yeah. But you still stopped." Those simple words hit Ethan harder than the brick itself. He stood silently for a moment while the cool evening wind moved through the street. Driving home slowly, Ethan noticed things he had never paid attention to before: children laughing, neighbors talking, old couples walking hand in hand. Usually he raced through life too quickly to see any of it. At a traffic light, he looked at the dent on the Jaguar door. Instead of anger, he now felt grateful. That ugly dent had opened his eyes more than any business seminar or motivational speech ever had. The next Monday, Ethan shocked everyone at work. He canceled unnecessary meetings and gave his exhausted employees an early holiday weekend. His workers stared at him like he had turned into an alien. One employee whispered, "Who replaced our boss?" Another joked, "Maybe he got hit by a brick." Ethan smiled secretly but said nothing. Later that day, he visited Daniel and Sam again, carrying pizza boxes, comic books, and a toolkit to repair the wheelchair. Over the next few months, Ethan became close friends with the family. He helped Mrs. Wilson repair her leaking roof and arranged medical treatment for Sam. In return, the boys taught Ethan how to enjoy life again. Daniel made terrible jokes every 5 minutes. Sam once placed a fake parking ticket on Ethan's Jaguar that read, "Penalty for driving too seriously." Ethan laughed harder than ever. The cold businessman slowly became warm and human again. One rainy evening, Ethan finally decided to repair the dented car door. He drove to the mechanic shop and explained the damage. The mechanic examined it carefully and said, "Easy repair. We can make it look brand new." Ethan stared at the dent silently for a few seconds. Then he shook his head. "No," he said softly. "Leave it exactly the way it is." The mechanic looked confused, but Ethan simply smiled. Years later, Ethan became a successful motivational speaker. But instead of talking about money or business tricks, he told people about kindness, attention, and humanity. During speeches, he often pointed to a photo of his dented Jaguar. People expected him to share a story about an expensive accident. Instead, he told them about 2 brave brothers and 1 life-changing brick. Audiences laughed at the funny moments but often cried by the end. One day, after a speech at a school, a young boy approached Ethan nervously. "Sir," he asked, "why do people wait for something bad to happen before they change?" Ethan thought carefully before answering. Then he smiled gently and replied, "Because whispers are easy to ignore. Bricks are not." The boy nodded thoughtfully while Ethan remembered that painful but beautiful afternoon many years ago. Life often sends us small warnings before big problems arrive. Sometimes it whispers through family, friends, stress, loneliness, or simple moments we ignore. But when we become too busy, too proud, or too selfish to listen, life may throw a brick at us to wake us up. Ethan learned that success means nothing if you cannot see people around you. A dented car can be repaired, but a cold heart is much harder to fix. The moral of the story is, slow down, care for others, and listen to life's whispers before the brick comes flying toward you.